Well, we're at it again today. We're going to do the Commodore 64 Ultimate, but this time we're going to plug in an Ethernet cable, do some networking, and maybe a little BBS. This is what's next. With the Ethernet plugged into my Commodore 64, we're going to select Commodore, restore. That gets us to our Commodore Ultimate menu. There are basically three areas that we need to set up. One of them is our network services and time zone. We also have our wired network setup and our Wi-Fi network setup. Currently, my Wi-Fi is disabled, as you can see on the screen. If we go into our wired connection, you're going to see that it is enabled. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do is create a static IP for this unit. So ignore the static IP information currently. We're going to run stop out of that. And last but not least, we're going to look at our network services and time zones. If you are going to do a static IP, you might want to make the host name a little shorter. I'm going to leave it as it is. Then down here under services, FTP file service, we have that enabled. We're going to show that. And our web remote control services. What's that? Well, part of the reason for the static IP is so we can get to this information easily later. All right, next, let's move over to my Mac and we'll do the rest of the setup there. Now that I'm on my Mac, I have logged into my Netgear Nighthawk system. And what you're going to want to do is go to your Advanced tab, go to Setup, and then LAN Setup. Again, our goal here is to create a static IP for that Commodore 64. This way, I have a singular IP address that I can go to at any moment, whether through the web browser, we're going to look at that, and also through FTP. Now, if I scroll down on this page, you are going to notice that I already have that Commodore 64 Ultimate is currently set up. Let me go zoom in. There you go. Now, how did I do this? If I go and I select Add, I can select any of the devices in the list. So, for example, here is that Commodore 64. And I could go and select it and then click Add. However, since I've already done that, I don't need to do that. I'm going to click Cancel. And you're going to notice that the IP address for this Commodore right now is 192.168.1.129. Now, watch what happens if I select a new tab, paste in that IP address. What's this? We actually have an HTTP server with the Commodore 64. Let's review this next. If you remember correctly, when we were going through the Ultimate menu, we had an option called Web Remote Control Service, and that's what we have here. There's a dedicated web server for the Ultimate 64 and 64 more cartridge systems. So this is actually referring to Gideon and Gideon's Ultimate 64 setup, which is basically the premise of the C64 U that was released. You can even go to their website if you want. There's a SID player, so you could come here and you could select a SID file, which I do not have right now, and then you could play it actually on your 64 remotely. We have a way to execute program files or CRT files. Again, you choose your file, upload it, and then run it from here, which would then execute it on your 64. You have the live monitor. To be honest, I know nothing about this. We're going to move on from there. We have the basic editor, so you can actually send a program. We'll show that in just a moment. You can reset the machine from here, and when you do that, it resets. So let me get the other camera recording here real quick. And if I select that button again, if I reset, you will see that it resets, and there's even a click in the background. You could even reboot your machine remotely, so I'm going to reboot that, and you can see in the recording, it works. You have menu button, which then takes you to the C64 Ultimate menu. There's some API documentation that you can, dive deeply into this. And then last but not least, you have the firmware releases. If I go and select that, and then we have the C3.14a has actually just been released. So that might be something we might want to do at some point. I'm going to not worry about it. This is, I believe, the version, this is the version that's currently included in the C64U. But my key thing that I really wanted to do was this basic tokenizer editor. Why? Well, I'm experimenting with AI, creating basic applications, and what a quick way to copy it in here and then run it on my live system. Yes, I have Vice, an emulator on here as well. That's a story for another day, so stay tuned for that. So let's go ahead and do a test here. We have this print hello world, go to 10. I'm going to click upload, walk over to the C64. We'll list the code, and then if we run it, there we go. Hello world is running. So that is your HTTP server. What about FTP? I know there are a ton of FTP solutions out there. I'm more familiar with FileZilla. So in this case, I'm just going to go download the client and download that and click that button. And basically we're just getting the client. As you can see, it's already running in the background. So I've labeled my connection C64U. I had to enter a username, so I just typed in root. There is the IP address. We're going to go ahead and connect, and we're going to say OK. And there are all the drives on the C64U. We have the SD drive, which there is the disk that I formatted and created in the prior video. We also have that USB drive that came with the C64U with all the games and demos and GEOS and BBS stuff. So you can easily access items here, and then I can easily copy items over to the C64 from my Mac. So that is a look at the FTP. Now, one of the things that I want to do, we have this BBS stuff. I've never played with a BBS before. Let's see if I can actually connect for the very first time with my Commodore 64 Ultimate. We're only going to do a brief look at a BBS. Been playing around with it a little bit myself, but maybe there are those that haven't done this before, so we're just going to walk through the steps. So I'm going to go Commodore Restore. We're going into our disk file browser and into the USB 1. Again, we're using the Commodore very second drive. Enter that and going into BBS. And the one that we're going to use today is the Ultimate Term. So we're going to select that, hit enter, and then enter again. You do have your instructions that you can view if you would like. You want to do the runmefirst.cfg file and then run the ultimate term.d64 and select run disk. All right, we have that information. So let's go ahead and run the configuration. So we're going to load those settings. Then we are going to go to the ultimate term D64 and we're going to run the disk. This is coming from the built-in floppy, but it doesn't take too long to boot up. I'm kind of surprised by that. We're going to go and click 1, ultimate term BBS client. We'll give it a few moments here. And here we are, Ultimate Term version 2.6. We have some additional information at the top of the screen, but we have our BBSs located at the bottom, and we can scan through those. And there's quite a few, and some of them work and some of them do not. The one that I was playing with earlier was this one here, bbs.retrocampus.com. Let's go ahead and enter that. And here we have news. Let's go and select one. And we have all these news sources. And there is one, number 9, the 8-bit guy. So we're going to go visit the 8-bit guy. If you're not familiar, 8-bit guy is another YouTuber. He's been around for a while. Changes coming for 2026. Let's see what that has to say. Select one and then press enter. And then there's the news for August 1st, 2026, it says. Get ready for a new year with the 8-bit guy. So I'm not sure about the date being right. Maybe that was supposed to say 2025. But anyways, I can go and press the period button and then enter. I can just select exit, which then takes me back to the retrocampus.com BBS. Pretty cool. There's even some games. You could play tic-tac-toe, Connect Magic, Zork. Awesome. We have this connected to the network. We have the static IP address set up. I have some fun stuff that I would like to start doing here and then share it with you all. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, let's go ahead and take it back to the studio for my final thoughts. Now that my C64U is networked, I look forward to playing around with BBSs a bit more. A little backstory, this was not something that my family could afford when I was younger. So my experience with BBSs is limited, so I'm trying to work on that now. I hope you found the demo on creating a static IP address for the Commodore on a local network to be somewhat helpful. Having the static IP will make it easier for me to move basic apps from my Mac to the Commodore, especially these programs I'm having AI create. Of course, that's a topic for another video or two, so get subscribed today to be notified when these episodes are posted. Well, that's a wrap for today. If you found this episode helpful or informative, could you take a moment to click the thumbs up icon? To watch another episode, you can click either here or here, and until next time, I'll see you again for another episode of Hey, What's Next?